Greetings to one and all. This will be my third tutorial on how to play a Ventrue character vampire in Vampire the Masquerade role-playing game, and today I will start retelling you the history of the Ventrue clan. However, even though I played the game for a while, I am no expert. So, if you see me make a mistake, feel free to point it out in the comments. I will start by telling you about the myths and folklore, which are generally scoffed at by the Camarilla. In the beginning, there was only Cain, who killed his brother Abel. He was cursed by God because of this, and the mark of Cain was placed upon him, a mark of someone who could kill higher beings. Lilith found him then and was intrigued by him and the mark that burned upon him. With her help, he learned all of the basic vampire disciplines through a blood ritual. During this ritual, 3 angels came to him, offering salvation if he should only repent for his crime. He refused them all, and each in turn bestowed a doom upon him: sunlight, fire, and the beast. Near the end of this ritual, a 4th angel came and told Cain his last remaining salvation was something called Golconda. After gaining these gifts and curses, Cain abandoned Lilith and spent the next few centuries feeling guilty and mournful about what he had done. Centuries later, Cain embraced 3 children: Enoch the Wise, Irad the Strong, and Zillah the Beautiful, a woman whom he was in love with. They were the 2nd generation of Cain. Together, they created and ruled the first city in the land of Nod. Cain named this city Enoch, as per his beloved first son. A mortal man named Ventrue, or perhaps Veddarta according to some sources, distinguished himself and helped Cain lead the people. For his impressive display, Cain asked Enoch to embrace this mortal. Ventrue thus became the first antediluvian, and with him the 3rd generation began. That is why the Ventrue believed themselves to be the oldest clan. Enoch, Irad, and Zillah embraced a few more mortals, and the other antediluvians followed. Some of the 3rd generation were equal to the 2nd, most notably Salaut the healer and Ventrue the leader, and Cain and his offspring ruled as gods. Cain set atop the highest pyramid in the first city, with his offspring on the tiers beneath him, and together they ruled the first city. It was then that the antediluvians started embracing humans, thus creating the clans, but Cain said no more, and they had to stop. After a time, Cain left the first city, and by Ventrue clan's folklore, left Ventrue in charge. But during Cain's absence, the biblical flood came and destroyed the first city entirely. The survivors built the 2nd city, and it was almost as grand and beautiful as Cain's city. They found Cain and asked him to return, but he refused, believing that the flood was a sign from God that it was a sin to breed vampires in the first place. There was a lot of tension between the clans in the 2nd city, but Ventrue ruled firmly. Through force of will, he established the rules, killing many and banishing troublemakers like Seth and Mekith. Thus an uneasy truce was formed. Absimiliard, the Nosferatu antediluvian, who had been a beautiful and handsome hunter, had convinced all of his siblings antediluvians to kill Enoch, Irad, and Zillah, Cain's firstborn. It is unclear where Ventrue stood in this. Some stories say he had kept out of this, while others say Cain had advised him to do just that before leaving. However, most believe that because of this, Cain came back one last time, standing before the walls of the second city, and cursed his offspring with their peculiarities. Ventrue with their refined tastes, Nosferatu with their ugliness, Bruja with their tendency towards frenzy, and so on. It is generally believed that the Nosferatu suffered the worst of these curses because of Absimiliard's initiation of this crime. Before living forever, Cain foretold them their own doom, the Gehenna, and told them to watch for its signs. He left, and no one had seen him since, though Beckett, a gangrel historian, had supposedly met him and travelled with him in the recent ages. After a time, tensions between the clans started to rise once again. Ventrue dispatched some children to find Cain, and some brought him news that they had. He put his most favored child in charge and left the city to ask Cain to come back and end these squabbles. The most accepted belief is that upon exiting the second city, Bruja beheaded Ventrue, and the city was torn apart in the jihad. The rest of the third generation, the antediluvians who spawned the clans, were torpored, and their children scattered across the world. Some Ventrue elders say that their progenitor still lives, and appears when the clan approaches some great disaster to stir them away from it. There are both unexplained cases and debunked frauds of such events, and the clan is not entirely sure what to believe. We now leave the area of myths and legends and start on with the actual history. In the ancient Mediterranean, a vampire named Mendon set himself up as a despot god and was murdered by the mortals. The news shook the vampires everywhere. Soon after, a Ventrue named Artemis came to Sparta, which was just a city-state at the time. There she met a philosopher Lycurgus. At first she wanted to feed on him, but they started talking, and his way of thinking inspired her. He wanted to conquer all the surrounding city-states and make Sparta the dominant one throughout the ancient world. The idea appealed to her, and she saw the Spartans as the ultimate of human potential, so she decided to guide the Spartans towards this end as their patron goddess. Mindful of Mendon's fate, however, she led from the shadows and whispered in the ears of rulers, instead of leading openly. Other Ventrue flocked to Sparta and followed her example in the surrounding cities. The most notable was Ivarcus of Corinth, who grew rich through trade and first saw the power of money. Thus the Peloponnesian League was formed. In those times, vampires did not fight one another openly, but would instead send mortal armies to do battle for them. However, Spartans went to fight the Persians without Artemis's approval. Athens was run by Bruja at the time, and they established a league of their own, the Delian League, which started to threaten Ivarcus's wealth. Inevitably, the two leagues went to war. In a brilliant maneuver, Spartan general Lysander sank Athens' navy and won the deciding victory. For this, he was embraced into the Ventrue clan. Artemis and Ivarcus came to the conquered Athens, but they were disappointed. All the Bruja had fled. The Bruja later called the Ventrue dangerous and mad with power. That was the first Bruja war. No one was pleased with its outcome. Eventually, Sparta fell. Her temple was burned, and Artemis and Lysander fled west into Italy. Ivarcus supposedly still lives today. That is the end of my third tutorial and the first part of the Ventrue clan's history. In my next tutorial, I will tell you about the Roman times, which is considered the golden age of the Ventrue. I hope this was helpful to you, and I'll see you again soon.